Aye, unanimous. Just a donation from a $60 donation and a pallet of food being donated by the people assistant animals, Corpus Christi of Aransas, to Aransas County. So we do appreciate that and thank you very much. Item number 5.
I move to approve the second quarter report for the Rockport Friends of the History Center.
Motion made and seconded, Commissioner Cheney. Pam, come on up.
Good morning.
Good
Glad
morning.
to see you guys today. So you have in front of you our report for April, May, and June. And I'll be really brief because I gave you all the details on that piece of paper report turned in. What we try to do at the History Center is get folks to come visit us by having events. And that's the main way we get people there, to see our exhibits, to see openings, and to participate in programs. So I thought it might be interesting for you to see a list of all the things that we've been doing during that quarter. We did celebrate our 10-year anniversary. Hard to imagine that since the organization was formed. We really spend a lot of time working with other groups in town, of course, with the Aransas Pathways, who's really our parent in a sense, but Aransas Pathways had their appreciation dinner in our wonderful backyard. Several of you were there, I know, and enjoyed that. And then we had an opening for our exhibit. We participated with the other major organizations, history organizations in town, to have awards for historic preservation. So we worked with the Historic Commission, who you'll hear from in a minute, and the Historical Society and Friends of the History Center. So all three of us got together to make that kind of an award for the county in that sense. And then we've been working with the other major museums, the Maritime, the Fulton Mansion, and the Art Center, as well as the Bay Education Center, to do family programs during the summer. So we've taken turns going to each of those facilities and having a Saturday day for families. We hosted the one just this last Saturday and had a really good time with those. So any questions?
Any questions for Ms. Stranahan? If not, thank you very much. Appreciate everything you do.
Thank you.
Roll call.
Aye.
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 Aye, unanimous. I make a motion to approve the second quarter 2022 report of the Aransas County Historical Commission. Do I have a second? Second, Commissioner Laubach. Come on up, Dave. Morning.
I guess we forwarded on to you the our treasurer's report for roughly the first half of the year, and so far we've spent only $1,600 out of the our $10,000 budget. We've got over $8,000 to spend for the rest of the year, so we better get going. So
Don't tell Renee Butler, she knows how to spend money.
we just spent about $500 here in the last 3 months, 250 of which was just a membership donation to the Texas, what was it, the Texas Tropical Trails membership, and gave $32 to the Friends of the Historic Commission, and $100 on Klein's, or marker for Klein's Cafe, and 156 on awards program. So like I said, we need to spend more money.
All right, thank you. Any
You're welcome.
questions for Mr. Hatton? If not, thank you, and thank you for what you do in your organization. All right. Roll call.
Aye.
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 Aye, unanimous. Item number 7.
I move to approve the Re-Platt, 1301 Narrow Drive, Lot 8, North Point.
You want the towels for your outside?
1 through 6, Block 8, North Point Marina, Phase 3.
Motion made and seconded, Commissioner Cheney. Any discussion? If,
Matt, you want to tell us a little bit?
This replat is coming to y'all because there are 6 lots. That is the only reason. All the lots meet the minimum county, state, and requirements. So there are no issues. But if there's any questions regarding the replat,
Now, I assumed it was 1 plat turning into 6. How do we even get involved if it's already 6 lots? Why do we get triggered?
it was platted as a block that was intended to be platted and subdivided later. And so now they're just subdividing it from a lot, block 8 into lots 5 and 6. And
Okay.
each lot will be more than half an acre and meet all the prescriptive requirements.
Thanks.
all right, any further discussion? If not, roll call.
Aye.
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 Aye, unanimous. Item number 8,
I move to approve a variance on Aransas County subdivision regulations on a minimum lot size to allow the replat of 37 and 38 Lazy Lane in Lamar from 3 lots into 1 lot.
motion made, second, Commissioner Castleline. Any discussion?
This replat is just for septic compliance. It is already developed. It already has structures on it. They have gotten their verification, the septic verification from environmental health. So it is a matter of the smaller lots being made larger for septic compliance.
Any further discussion? If not, roll call.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, unanimous. Item number 9,
Move to approve proposed change order number 2 from RCA parking lot project to extend the term of the project by 37 days. This project is part of the community development block disaster recovery general land office contract number 20-065-098-C270.
motion made, second, Commissioner Cheney. Any discussion?
Yeah, I understand. We're not changing the budget and we're just changing the trees and
This
the
is-
ground cover and letting a little time to do some irrigation work.
This is just, tidying up the end of the project. We're actually under budget. No budget change.
Any further discussion? If not, roll call.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, unanimous. Item number 10, by the request of legal, move to table. Second, Commissioner Cheney. Roll call.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, unanimous. Item number 11,
Move to approve the June 2022 treasurer's report.
motion made and second, Commissioner Cheney. Any discussion? Roll call.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, unanimous. Item number 12,
Second.
motion made and second, Commissioner Castleline. Any discussion? Roll call.
Aye.
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 Aye, unanimous.
Move to approve authorizing the county judge to send the optional health care services notification for Aransas County Indigent Health Care for optional service to be allowed for the fiscal year September 1st, 2022 through August 31st, 2023.
Second.
Motion made and second, Commissioner Laubach. Any discussion?
Yeah. What exactly is it?
Well, we don't have anybody here from HR because they're, one's out, but both of them are out ill. So
But the staff memo says we do this every
Linda,
year.
are you online? I talked to her earlier today.
We do this every year and we're required to send out a notification and we're not making any changes this year.
Right.
I think Alma might know the answer. She's online.
Which number are we on? I cannot hear y'all.
13.
Right, so those are the options for our indigent healthcare that we do every year, and there is no changes. The state just allows us to either opt or not opt to the options that are on the list.
I don't know what's wrong with it. She did. I don't know what's wrong with our reception there, but both of them sound like they're problems. Anyway, roll call.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, unanimous. Item 14. Is this a discussion for policy revision of the employee handbook regarding military leave? It's same thing.
I think it's a state requirement that
Yeah,
requires us.
requires us to meet their standards, so it's no big change. It's something we have to do. Roll call.
Judge
Oh, I'm
Mills?
sorry, it's not action item. Yeah.
Can we,
Judge
I had a
Mills?
question on that one. I think that somebody's trying to speak.
I have a question. This is Commissioner Rousseau. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. It's just a little bit garbled.
All right. On page 13, number 8, continuing health benefits. It says
Mr.
that
Russo, we can't.
employees,
Hold on just a minute. We're having problems with the reception.
There's something strange about the microphones, Pat. We just can't quite hear you.
okay.
Oh, that's better
All
now.
right, let's try it again.
All right.
Oh, that's better.
On page 13, under section 8, continuing health benefits, it says employees on military leave may be responsible for paying the total cost. Is that may or will? Because there's quite a difference.
I think that's on you, Jen, if you know the
Yeah,
answer.
It was. My microphone was muted. I apologize. It does say may, and the reason it says that is because it's up to the individual employer to determine for that employer whether the military member will be expected to pay for those expenses. It also depends on what kind of leave they are on. So you're correct. It does say may, and it would be up to the commissioner's court to make a decision about whether that should be revised to say shall.
Jennifer, the way that reads to me, it says that it's up to the employee. It says the employee may continue.
I would have to,
I don't know if that makes a big difference.
would you mind reading the section that you had the question about, Commissioner Russo?
It says,
Me?
continuing health benefits, employees on military leave may continue insurance coverage while on military leave. Employees on military leave may be responsible for paying the total cost of the coverage.
Yes, Commissioner Cheney, I think that read with what Commissioner Russo, now my mic.
Oh, I understand that the second sentence, but the very first sentence just kind of confused me a little bit.
So it sounds like the first part is optional on the part of the employee, but the second part is optional on our part.
That's correct. And I
Okay.
don't know why none of these microphones are working.
Okay, that's fine.
Does anybody know, do we?
I think the
have-
question, the answer to Commissioner Russo's question is whether the employee wants to keep the coverage is up to the employee.
Right.
The question she had is whether the county is going to pay for it if the employee chooses to continue. And my answer
Correct.
to that is it would be up to the county to decide that.
In each case.
Or you
So
could-
each case
yeah.
will be brought before Commissioner's Court?
No,
Unless we make a blanket decision to cover everybody, which we have not yet done.
But I think earlier in this document, it mentioned how the employee would be reimbursing the county for the cost of the insurance, did it not?
Have we ever had instances of this coming up? I mean, have we had people that got called up for active duty or whatever.
Thank you.
Are these working?
I can hear you.
Can you hear me in this one?
Yeah.
All right.
I can hear you.
Apologize for that. The microphone at the desk was not working. Whether the employee continues the health coverage is optional because technically once they're gone for more than 30 days, then they kind of go into still employed, but kind of on leave status. And after it's been 1 year, that even changes again. So we aren't going to force anyone to continue to carry our benefits, just like we would do for anyone else. That's an option. It'll be up to Commissioner's Court whether the employee has to pay the entire cost of that benefit while they're on that leave status. Normally what would happen when an employee is on, for example, FMLA, is we would continue to cover the employer's portion and the employee would continue to cover the employee's portion. This is different in that the employee would have to cover, theoretically, the entire cost of the benefit and the county would not continue to pay for the county's portion. Does
Or
that
it's
make
not-
sense?
It's not obligated, but we might decide that we could.
That's correct. And we could decide before you adopt this policy. This is just a first reading of the policy to try to answer questions you might have. And if you have any questions in the next 2 weeks, please let me know and I can answer questions and provide the answers to everyone. And then we can discuss those at the next meeting before we ask you to vote.
I hope we'll get some, I need some financial numbers, for considering who we've had leave. for
We have very
medical
few
work.
people that go on military leave. And I wish Linda's not here today. I think she was on Zoom, but I don't know that we can hear her. I think right now we have 2 employees that are on some type of military leave status.
I mean, I know you can't give us financial numbers now, but that would be something that would be nice to have before the next meeting. Some kind of a history of how many people have gone on military leave and what it would have cost us if we had completely covered not only in the employee portion, but or at least they would continue to normally cover their own employee contribution, but how much it would have cost us if we had covered the employer portion. Or if we did voluntarily or whatever happened. And what
And
it
I can
cost.
work with Linda and Tana to try to get some numbers for you before we ask for a vote. The big deal with this policy, the big reason why you're seeing it is I've completely rewritten it. Our current policy is very short. It's about a paragraph and a half, 2 paragraphs, and it doesn't cover all the different types of leave that we are required to provide under state and federal law. So the idea was to make sure that our policy includes all of those different leave types. So an employee knows what's available to the employee and that so coworkers understand what the employee's rights are as a military member.
And probably need to go into this later at a later date, but as National Guard member, you can be called up at any time for anywhere from 24 hours to 24 months.
It's in the policy.
Okay. How does that handle?
It-
I didn't see that.
It's all in the policy. At the very beginning there, you'll look at people who are called, especially to help in a disaster, or if somebody's called to secure the border. There are certain days that are required that we provide as paid leave under federal law if they're called for service for National Guard. And there are different dates that are required that we cover as paid leave if they're going under, like if they're Army Reserve and they're called to active duty for a short period of time.
Right.
So those sections are both at the very beginning of the policy. And I believe it's 15 days for one and then up to 21 days for the other. If I'm remembering correctly, I don't have it in front of me.
And also, if they're called up under National Guard for a period of, say, 60 days, or do we retain their job for them?
Yeah.
How long do we do? Is that in there as well?
It is in there as well. And that there's for 60 days, then there is a very good chance that the position that they held will be held open. However, if you have someone in a leadership position, it may be that we have to have somebody step in as an interim while they're absent. But in any case, if you have somebody who's away on military leave, they will have an ability to come back to the same or like position.
Right.
So if it's a lower level position, if we can't keep that exact position open, it'll be something of like nature and it's the same pay or better.
Jennifer,
Yes,
can you
ma'am.
hear me?
Yes.
All right. Usually when a person is called up for service, the military will provide insurance for them and their household while they're on service duty. And the county would be responsible for making sure that when they returned, they would be reinstituted in our health insurance, just as we do with FMLA. Is that correct?
When they're on FMLA, they can retain coverage and they're still in an employee status. They're still employed. When they're on
Right.
military leave, it's slightly different in character. They're not employed the same way as they are when they are on FMLA. And
Right.
even though an employee is eligible for coverage under, usually it'll be TRICARE, there is no mandatory sign up for that healthcare coverage. And it would be up to the individual employee, if you approve the policy, to let them choose to either continue to carry the county's benefits or TRICARE or both. In essence, the county's coverage could become a secondary insurance for them and their family.
Right. I just wanted to establish that we would not be leaving the employee with no insurance.
That's correct.
We might make our decision whether to cover the employer's portion on the basis of whether we felt they had adequate alternatives, say under the military coverage, or they might make a case why it wasn't adequate and why we should continue to pay.
That's correct. Also, the most important time period that this will come into effect is if somebody's gone on a short-term leave basis. So if they're gone for 2 weeks or 30 days, it wouldn't necessarily make sense for them to leave our benefits and then come back upon their return.
Right. But they would still be getting some form of pay from us to reimburse them from their time away.
If they haven't already used their time away in the paid leave that's allotted that particular year, yes, that's correct.
This is the item that I said I would add to every meeting until we had another formal budget workshop in August, but I have not received any requests from the public to discuss anything. I move to approve authorizing and designating Anna Marshall, Aransas County Tax Assessor Collector, as the person to calculate the 2022 tax rate.
I'll second that. Aye.
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 Aye. You're going to come up and explain to us what it is? Yeah, the people at home can't hear you. Sorry, you got to speak.
It's just a formality.
It is people at home have no idea what it is.
We are required by tax code to sign this, although we do not use sales tax for the debt portion of the tax rate.
Okay, so we're
Regardless of it being zero, we still have to sign it.
okay. So the state law requires us to make this announcement, but it has no real impact on us because we don't in fact use our sales tax for debt
Correct.
service. I know that's obvious to us. It's just not obvious to the people at home.
Move to approve budget line item transfer.
I'll second that. Aye.
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 I move to approve accounts payable and payroll liabilities.
All normal. There. Oh, Ms. Russo, you had a question?
I have a question. Tana? Can you hear me?
Who did you say, Tana or Anna?
Isn't Tana the one who's answering this?
Yes.
Yes,
ma'am.
but we thought you said
Okay.
Anna.
Okay, no. Under the account 120570497, there are multiple payments being made for juvenile detention. and some of the timeframes are redundant. So could you just explain what those different amounts are for? There are, I believe, 6 of them on this pay schedule.
Are you okay if I look into that and I can get back to you this week?
All right, and then I have one other question. And I will tell you that the vendor number for that, if you want it, is 0100497. And then the other question on Mott McDonald, the $43,584 payment, and the Allstate Tower, $114,140 payment. Could you just give a little bit of information about those 2 items, please?
Can you give information, John? I'm not sure.
Commissioner Russo, I'll tell you on the tower is that's this one?
Yeah.
Okay. On the tower, on the Allstate Tower, that's your preliminary engineering and the beginning portion of their contract.
Okay,
That's a community block grant.
right.
And Commission, can you hear me?
I can.
Okay. On the Mott McDonald, that is on the GLO C270 grant. And that is a breakdown of their engineering services for the streets and drainage projects for their current amount. On the Copano Heights, they did the bid advertising and bid packet. And I don't have the complete invoice in front of me, but I know they had charges on Linden and there were 2 other streets, but I'd have to pull back up that invoicing to see what those were for.
All right, thank you, Tish.
You're welcome.
Judge Mills, did you vote on?
I think we need to vote on that.
On
I-
item 19?
Accounts payable, we didn't, we just moved. We voted on the budget line items, but not the,
Aye.
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 Had me looping off. May I approach to?
Coming from Houston.
You thought you did. But they had other ideas. Thank you.
Thank you, Tracy, for coordinating my presentation and approving me today to speak to you all about 211 Texas, which is a state helpline. Across Texas, you can call 24 hours a day to access community resources and information. I'm Janice Shue. I'm the Outreach Disaster Coordinator for 211 Texas in the Coastal Bend region. So I cover the 12 counties doing outreach education about our service. And then I have a role during times of disaster. Where do I point, Colin? Anywhere. The button, right? I can usually follow technology. Technology Monday. Thank you. So 211 is actually a national dialing code assigned by the Federal Communication Commission to be designated across the nation. Actually, there's 211 centers in Canada as well as the number to call for health and human service information. And so it is available 24 hours a day in Texas, accessible by dialing 211 and contacting us through our website or through chat on the website. We also have an alternate toll-free number, which is usually designated during times of disaster. You'll see it on the text dot static signs promoting 211, and it's also used from out-of-state callers who are calling 211 to get resources for family or friends. If our call specialists don't speak the language that someone is calling in, we access a language line interpreter service, which is over 150 languages. Next slide. Thank you. So the contract for the Coastal Bend is through the United Way of Greater Houston. That's my employer to provide the service for 211. The call center is in Houston, although since March 13th, 2020, we have been statewide routing and remote. So most of all of our call specialists are still answering calls through HHSC laptops at home. Our helpline in Houston is the largest of its kind. Last year, we connected 1.1 million individuals. That's the Gulf Coast region, Coastal Bend, Fort Worth, and then we are a backup for 211 Texas for the state. We also have a Mission United team, which is coordinated veteran specialists. Some are retired military veterans or their families are active duty, and they do follow-ups to make sure services for veterans, family members are being connected. And we are also contracted to facilitate the STEER, State of Texas Emergency Assistance Registry. And I'll go over that more in another slide. And again, we're available 24 hours a day. So who answers the phone? Next slide. Our call specialists are highly skilled, certified information referral professionals, certified from our national information referral standards. We have staff that speak these languages on staff, Spanish, Vietnamese, Urdu, and Mandarin. But primarily they're caring individuals to connect our help seekers to help and hope. So I told you that 211 is not only in Texas, but it is nationwide. So here's the latest map, about 96% overall coverage. There is a website, 211.org. If you're looking for resources outside of Texas for someone, you can go on that website. It'll tell you the nearest one. So in 2021, for Coastal Bend, we had over 47,233 connections, primarily those calling 211 for information. Of those, 959 were military connections. And of that total, 9,455 were COVID-19 connections, still seeking testing, immunizations, assistance if they lost their job. So that's still in our top 10 requests is something related to COVID-19. Here is the state map. As I said, when you dial 211, your call goes through a telephony system. And so that's the gray area at the bottom is Coastal Bend. But there are 25 centers contracted with Texas Health and Human Services. We receive funding from Texas Legislature General Revenue as a network and as individual contractors. And we built the redundancy of the system. If one or two centers were to go down, the calls could be answered anywhere in the network. And we built that for mainly large hurricane events, because people would still need information. So when you dial 211 now, you hear the welcome message. It's kind of helps you to decide which option you might need. So option, then you select your language, English, Spanish, TTY, or video relay if you're deaf or hard of hearing, and then 0 for other languages. That gets into the interpreter service, and then a service selection. So we are option 1, information referral. We've been a network, we'll celebrate 20 years, October 10th. We took our first call. Option 2 is anything with state benefits, your Texas benefits, if you're applying or need to update. Option 3 is inspector general, if there's anyone needing to report any Medicaid or state benefit fraud or waste by an individual or a provider. Option 4 is the STEER registry. Option 8 is mental health and substance abuse legislation we were written into. And then option 6 is the COVID information, which continues to answer calls. So how can we help at 211? Well, we are connection information about resources in the community. This is just examples of the type of categories we have in our database. Most people calling 211, I'd say about 85% of our calls for basic needs, for someone that needs food or rent or utility assistance or medication assistance or transportation. But we do get calls on a variety of topics. Next slide. Most of our call specialists answer about 150 calls per 8-hour shift. Any given time, there's about 200 specialists across the network answering calls. As a network, we answer close to 2 million calls last year. So this is the Coast of Bend data. It just shows you our top 10 agency referrals, and then the top 10 need requests on the other side. So there were over 59,000 referrals given to different agencies last year. And you can see the top in the pie chart, 61% is that income support request. So like help for basic needs. Next slide. I did pull Aransas County data. That's part of what I've been doing is going to all the commissioners' courts so you can see information about your own county. So in 2021, there was over 1,411 contacts. You can see the map on the left where the concentration of those come from. We have a call by month graphic that shows you how the calls tend to increase, decrease, and how many there were. And then on the last box, it's the top zip code. So 78382 had over 1,229 calls just from that zip code. So commissioners, if these other zip codes are your service area, that gives you an idea of the amount of calls coming from your precincts. Next slide. Of those calls last year, you can see again the top agency referrals. So 1,700 referrals were given. And then the needs, again, the most requested need was the income support. We refer a lot to Good Samaritan Rockports here and to the Coastal Bend Troop Support for military veteran services. So y'all are fortunate to have some social services in your county because many of the other counties do not, and there's not a place to refer them to for help. Next slide. And I believe I pulled your COVID data. Yes. So out of your calls last year, 376 were COVID-19 related. Tells you the age group. You can see the highest age group is 60 plus. There was 198 calls from that group. The languages, the military of those that called about COVID, again, the zip codes, and then the referrals that we provided. So we would have been providing and still continue if you have any immunization clinics, your testing sites, your any of that information that is provided, we put that in our database. Next slide. So we are in a multi-disaster response. We still receive calls from survivors of Harvey for long-term recovery, despite Coastal Bend disaster recovery having discontinued because the funding went out for case management. So Aransas County is very special to me because I was one of the founding members of the Coastal Bend Disaster Recovery Group. So I actually got to hire and train all the case managers that helped with long-term recovery and took the cases here to unmet needs to get funded. And so we're also still dealing with COVID and the winter storms. You know, we've had 2 back-to-back, the worst one being in 2021. Next slide. So we are a place to call before, during, and after disaster. When there's any kind of storm that starts forming in the Gulf, we have an increase in steer calls. People want to register and make sure that their information is in there so that Rick McCluster and all the other emergency managers have access to that if they need to coordinate transportation or assistance to evacuate a resident. We get calls about evacuation routes, if there's declarations, shelter reception areas, where those would be along the, the 37 corridor. If there's local, state, or federal assistance, reassurance, a lot of rumor control. People think when it rains and there's 2 or 3 inches of rain and a little bit of street flooding that they're going to get FEMA. So we're always dispelling the myth of how the county qualifies for FEMA, and then long-term recovery. Next slide. So we still are getting calls as of, as I said as of June 21st, we've had 25,000 calls for COVID-19. Those continue daily. Next slide. And I believe now it's going into TDEM. So TDEM is the facilitator of the State of Texas Emergency Assistance Registry. So this is information from Samantha Fabian, the STEER coordinator. Next slide. And so I'm going to talk about STEER. It's a free registry for any Texan to give their information. It asks questions about functional access needs. I'll give you an example. If you have a resident, say maybe they are they're diabetic, insulin dependent, perhaps they've had a below the knee amputation due to their diabetes, or they have dialysis 3 times a week. They have a provider at home, home health, see a doctor routinely. Maybe they have medical equipment they have to use at home. They live alone. If they needed to evacuate for a hurricane, they may not have transportation or limited, family or friends that could take them. That is someone we encourage to register, because then that information for the county is accessed by the data custodian, which is also Patricia Arnold. And that helps with the planning that emergency manager would have to look at that information and see, would they need to order an ambulance, or could they do an ambulance, or what extra transportation assets Aransas County may need to ask for. It does not guarantee that you'll receive a specific service. So it doesn't guarantee that someone from Rockport, Aransas County is going to come to your door and pick you up, but it's additional information that a local emergency manager has. Next slide. Yes, sir.
In your transportation, do y'all use Real?
We don't use transportation. We're not direct services. We refer to Real. Yes, that's one of our referrals for transportation in the counties that they provide. But we are not in the coordination business of services, so we refer to that, what's appropriate for that zip code. The communities that participate in STEER, which is pretty much the whole state, they use the information in different ways. And so we have been directed by TDEM Chief Kidd. If someone we register wants to know exactly what kind of service am I going to get in this city or county, we are to refer them to their Office of Emergency Management. They have to re-register every year, January through December. We encourage people to register early now. Don't wait till there's a storm in the Gulf. Next slide. Because there is a point in time where, 12 to 24 hours pre-storm, emergency managers are busy. Your community may have already asked for voluntary or mandatory evacuations. That data simply cannot be accessed, in that amount of time. So who should register? People with disabilities, medically fragile, if they have limited mobility, communication barriers, if they need additional medical assistance during an emergency, personal care, or if they were going to require transportation. Next slide. So here's how you register. There's a state website. You can create an account and register online. You can dial 211 24 hours a day, select your option for language, and then your option 4, speak with the call specialist. Takes about 15 to 20 minutes. There are about 6 pages of questions. Nursing homes, assisted livings are required under legislature to register their patient bed count. There's access there to a form where they can do that. They have to do it at the beginning of hurricane season. There's individual forms in English and Spanish also on that website. So it is no longer confidential. Legislation was just passed this last session that if any first responders or state agencies have to assist during a disaster, the information is not confidential. It can be shared among other first responders. What's required at minimum, your language, your name, and address. It does not, since it's GPS geocoded, does not allow a PO box because a responder would need to know where you're at and go to that actual address, and a phone number. That's the minimum to register. And then it asks additional questions. So here are examples of the additional questions. Your emergency contact, if you have pets. Do you have a dog? Do you have a cat? Do you have a crate? Do you have we register snakes, chickens, lizards, fish, everything, because many years ago, Governor Perry said, we will not be a Katrina, and we do not want people to not evacuate who have a pet. So we register pets into the system. Again, if they have transportation issues from home, communication barriers, if they have functional access, medical needs. If it's an asterisk in that field, we have to fill it out. So as I said, last minute registrations may not make it to a local emergency managers. Elected officials assign, Judge Mills has assigned who the data custodian is to look at that data. And they always start pulling that data before an event is pending, like a storm in the Gulf. So again, if you're registered, you receive this postcard you see on the end of the side of the presentation. I think in December they send it out to remind people you have to re-register every year. Some people may have moved, someone's health may have changed. Maybe now they've had a stroke and they have limited mobility. And so that's why they're encouraged to re-register every year. They do hold on to the data, I think 2 months after into the new year, and then it's archived. Next slide. So again, you know, when someone registers and they ask, how's my information going to be used? We refer that back, you know, to the data custodian for that city or county. Next slide. Again, our main message is it does not guarantee a specific service. And if someone has a specific question about how their city or county handles an emergency or a disaster, they should contact that office. Next slide. And that's just a repeat of everything. You can fill out a steer form for someone else. Many home health, hospice, medical equipment companies, when they get an order from a doctor and they admit them to service, a lot of them will have the patient or family fill out the form or call 211 and talk to them about, you know, we all have to have our own preparedness. What is that plan? A, B, C, D, E, and have them register and steer. So anyone can fill out the form for somebody else who wants to register. Next slide. I think that's the end. Just a reminder about our website. We have chat available 24 hours a day in English and Spanish. We are all required, all 25 centers under our contract with HHSC, to upload our comprehensive database to the website monthly. So there's resource information there as well. Next slide. I believe that's the end. So that is the end of the presentation. We do have a data dashboard. It's called 211 Counts Texas. It's on the website. It has a lot of filters of really good information you could run by a school district with the zip code, by elected official, by a state representative. And it has a lot of different information and shows you what the calls are coming into the network, which are always consistent with what calls we receive at each 211. So thank you again. I'll answer any questions.
We really try hard with acronyms because, you know, we're trying to be upfront. Tell me again specifically what STEER stands for. It's
Texas Division of Emergency Management's database they created. It's State of Texas Emergency Assistance Registry.
State of Texas.
Emergency Assistance Registry. Yes, disaster field is very acronym heavy, so please ask me to clarify. The TSA can mean 3 or 4 different things. And if you're at the airport fixing to fly, you know what TSA is there. But if you're here in response, it could be the Salvation Army has their canteens rolling out in communities, right? Yes, sir.
The 211 organization is a terrific organization for the state. Thank you.
Thank you, Judge Mills.
All right. Something interesting just happened while Ms. Hsu was putting on her presentation. We had 2 additional people, or not people, but they're people to some people. Anyway, Laura, you want to tell us what's going on?
And you want to bring them up here?
Yeah, I will. Just a second. I'm Laura Caesar, and Director for Aransas County Animal Control. And as you can see, the last few months have been great on donations. The last 7 months, I couldn't ask for more. However, we are running at overcapacity for the last 4 months. It is a juggling act, but I wanted you to see we have some great dogs, great dogs that are just looking for a home. We have Sunny, who's a 3 or 4 year old shepherd type. She was left on 188 and B at that tank battery with 4 of them. Just left out there. So we've been fortunate. 2 of them have left. We're down to 2. We also have, this is Ladder, part of Hook and Ladder, who were left at Rockport Fire Station. Hook got adopted. We still have Ladder, about 3-4 months old. Just a good looking little dog. So I just want you to be aware, we have nice dogs out there because we're full, beyond full. And we want to keep our 95% release rate. So if you're looking for anything, you can go to our website. Colin has it hooked up. You can go to Pet Finder and look for any dog or cat you might need. All right, appreciate it.
And Lori's
Thank you.
letting me take her dog that she, I think is the longest lived.
Scarlett will be
Scarlett has
going
been there a
home with
year.
Commissioner Lawbuck.
But she
has
won't let me have her
been
till
a
Saturday.
year at there and no one has looked at her. Tana has put her through another chance, has done all her medical, put her through heartworm treatment. They do that with all the dogs. So you're getting a healthy animal. So just if you have a chance, you want to look, go to Pet Finder on the county website and see if we got something that might fit your need.
Lori, can you put them, bring them up so they could be on camera?
Yeah.
Come on,
And
bring them up here.
and bring them up here.
I don't
when you're
know.
finished.
Bring 'em.
Sunny, you know,
Yeah,
come
bring 'em
on.
up.
Judge's lap.
Yeah, I want them in my lab. Come on, right up here.
Sunny hasn't been out much, so I wasn't sure how she was gonna react. She was bored.
She's a beautiful dog.
Oh,
She is.
And look at that. Okay, you're not bringing them up, huh?
And then Ladder's just a little brindle, you know. But as always, our, your adoption fee, $50 covers your spay and neuter and Tana pays up all the extra.
Yeah.
Smart dog.
Oh.
Anyway, we got some time to waste, so let them pet the dog for another 15 minutes if you want to. Yeah, that's for sure. We're waiting on Mr. Henderson. He's in traffic. Well, says he'll be here by 10:15. I hope my wife's not watching because I really like to take that German Shepherd home with me. But yeah.
I think we got some bows in your office. We can put around it.
I don't think that'd be a good idea. My wife and my dog that I have at home probably wouldn't like it either.
Why would everybody? do
Got his tail going.
I forgot one other valuable person. Natalie Edwards has been one of our youth volunteers this summer. She's been every day out there helping with filling kongs, cleaning, doing dishes. So we have now about 3 or 4 that are showing up. So
That's great. Get
We're
some
getting
young
there.
people out there to help you out.
yeah,
Appreciate it. Thank you. I'm going to call a recess until 10:15 for the next presentation. Mr. Henderson is on his way and hopefully he doesn't get pulled over because he says he's driving fast. We're in recess until 10:15. And I, oh, yes, I am. Bob, believe it or not, you don't talk loud enough for the mic to hear you way over there, so you're gonna have to go to the. Normally, yes, but now we're on Zoom. All right, item number 21. 20, sorry. I've already scratched that one out. Discussion. All right, Mr. Henderson, let's talk about it. The refinancing the tax notes series 2021.
Thank you, Your Honor, and members of the court. I want to again apologize for my tardiness. I have no good excuse. I thought the meeting started at 10 instead of 9, and here I am. Sorry. And apologize to the public for anybody that had to unduly wait on me. As we know, we're here to talk about refinancing the 2020 notes that the county issued to finance the construction along with grant proceeds and insurance proceeds of the new county courthouse. For circumstances that we're all aware of in terms of the certificate of obligation, the petition was signed in the subsequent election. Commissioners Court elected at that time to issue tax notes under the statutory authority vested in the Constitution of the state. Somewhere around here, we've got a lawyer. Sorry. That could explain the details of that, should anybody have any interest in it. But the bottom line is the county court decided to issue tax notes that had a final maturity per statutory authority of 7 years. The Commissioners Court had promised the citizens of the county that they would be able to affect this transaction, the financing of the courthouse is a better way to put it, without a tax rate increase. So that tax note was structured in such a way that we had relatively low payments, as if there would have been a 20-year amortization on that debt for the first 3 years, and then balloon payments for the last 3 years of the transaction. It was well advertised, well publicized at the time that in order to fulfill the Commissioners Court's commitment to the public to not have a tax rate increase, that we put a short call date in that debt in order to be able to refinance it before those payments went up. And that's what we are here to do. So refinancing this debt is something that was, as Commissioner Lawback suggested in one of her posts, was baked into the original transaction back in 2020. Pursuant to that policy or that plan, we did go out in the last 10 days with the tremendous assistance of the county judge and county auditor and the county auditor staff, which is our top flight, and approached Standard & Poor's for a reconfirmation of the rating of Aransas County. And we did get that reconfirmation in about the middle of last week. And I might, Judge, I'd like to just read a couple of comments that this rating report highlighted. The first and primary good news is the rating agency did reaffirm the AA rating of the county and did reaffirm that the outlook is stable. For people, members of the public who may not be familiar with the bond rating agency's criteria and the actual ratings themselves, AAA is the highest rating that anybody can get. Nobody gets a triple any better than a AAA. So for a county this size, population more or less 25,000 people, to have a AA rating is quite an accomplishment. We all know that since Hurricane Harvey in particular, we have had increased focus by all three of the rating agencies on communities' susceptibility to natural disasters and what that can mean for ratings. Right after Hurricane Harvey, Standard & Poor's and Moody's both lowered the ratings of some 37 coastal communities across the Gulf Coast in Texas. A lot of those have recovered those ratings, and certainly Aransas County was among the first to do so, and we benefited with that re-establishment of the AA rating back when we issued the 2020 notes. They are now reaffirming that again. One of the things the ratings reflect, and the rating report has been distributed now to all the members of the court and will be made public in a couple of different ways. I know Ms. Lawback will put it on her post. The rating reflects their views of the counties is, and there's 4 bullet points. 2 of them is consistently positive operations and maintenance of reserves. Another one is low debt burden as a % of market value with rapid amortization and no additional debt plans. Strengths, the ratings reflect their strengths of their assessment of the county's financial management practices, and management frequently monitors ongoing budget performance and responds accordingly. So without reading the whole report to the court, very, very positive rating. As we know, city, when they did a similar project for the city hall, refinanced their debt at 20 years in order to achieve the originally contemplated final maturity of the COs that the city had issued. We had discussed that possibility with the Commissioners Court when we did the 2020 notes, and that's why the 2020 notes were amortized in the first 3 years as if it would ultimately be a 20-year transaction. We have had extensive conversations with the judge and with the county auditor's office and a couple of commissioners about the future debt plans of the county, and find that in the intermediate period of time, there are no plans to issue additional debt. We also know that the Central Appraisal District today, July the 25th, will issue the final certified tax rolls, but we are anticipating, based on the information provided by the Central Appraisal District already, that the tax rolls are going to go up about 16% this year. Mostly, as I understand it, and certainly this is reflective of my personal property in the county, from new construction and new improvements, not reevaluations of existing property. So that's a great report. For that reason, no anticipated issuance of debt in the intermediate future for the county, and very strong growth in the taxable assessed valuation. It has been decided that we would, and of course it's subject to the Commissioner's Court approval this morning, that we would extend the debt only to that degree necessary to achieve level debt service and avoid a tax rate increase as would occur if the balloon payments were not refinanced. So instead of going out to a final maturity of 20 years, we're going out to a final maturity of 12 years. And as I had discussed in detail with some one-on-one meetings, I almost want to call it 11 and a half years, because our very last payment is actually half of the previous year's payments. So we're excited about that. As a result of that, we are anticipating net present value savings to basically be a wash, pretty close to a wash, other than the fees incurred in having to do a second financing. The numbers I've discussed at length with Commissioner Laubach was a negative net present value of $222,000. The estimated cost of issuance are about $210,000 of that, so only about $12,000 would be attributable to interest. We shall see what happens with interest rates this morning. As was the case with the marketing of the 2020 notes, the same underwriters that did that transaction are handling this transaction, and they went out into the marketplace at 9 a.m. this morning, and we are incurring we call an order period through about 11 o'clock. At 11 o'clock, we will review the order flow, see where we're oversubscribed in some maturities, possibly undersubscribed in others, and based on that, do some final negotiations on interest rates. So I do not have final numbers at this exact moment. We have scheduled what we call a time certain reconvening of the Commissioner's Court at 1:30. So when we come back at 1:30, We will simply be able to show you the final numbers and get those exact numbers that I know particularly Commissioner Laubach is interested in. So we're not asking the court to approve anything right at this moment, and nor am I making any hard and fast assertions as to what the results will be, but we are expecting at 1:30 to be able to come back to you with final results.
I have
I
a,
know I talk fast. Does anybody have any questions?
yes, I do. With which commissioners have you discussed the future debt plans for the county?
With future debt plans, I spoke to the judge, I spoke to Commissioner Casterline, I spoke to you.
You mean your last week?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. When we were sitting in Jackie Cochran's office.
In discussing with me, you just mean you hadn't heard of, I mean, I don't know what the future debt plans. You mean talking to me about my personal views of whether we should?
Yes,
borrow more?
your personal views as to whether or not you thought that there was any major capital improvement plans in the foreseeable future that required debt issuance, and you agreed that you did not think there were.
Okay. I can imagine saying something like that. I just don't recall. And the net present value, I've had lots of questions about this. So I understand that the general idea is, I think that the raw numbers, gross numbers are that it costs about $1.6 million more this way.
About the numbers that you and I went over, Commissioner, were $1,365,000.
Yeah, I'm sorry, more like $1.4 million, under $1.4 million.
In what we call gross dollars. And that's a great question. And it's a question that always causes some level of confusion. When we do a refunding like this, there are two sets of dollars. There's two definitions of dollars that we're looking at. One's called gross dollars, which means the raw dollars that are actually paid over time. And then there's net present value, which is you look at that stream of payments over time and you present value those dollars back to today's dollars to get what's called, to take into consideration the time value of money. The difference between paying $1 today versus paying $1 10 years down the road. So when we net present value that stream of payments back, and you ask in our personal conversation, an excellent question, which was, what is the discount rate that we apply to that present value calculation? And the answer is, per IRS regulations, we use what's called the arbitrage yield rate, which was enunciated in the numbers that I showed you.
And I remember that it was the arbitrage real yield rate that the IRS causes you to use. I just don't remember what the percentage number was.
It was 3.02% based on the estimates of interest rates that we looked at 10 days ago. That number will change when we complete our pricing.
So if you take something close to something between $1.3 million and $1.4 million, spread out over 12 years, 10 years from now, and use as lower discount rate as a little over 3%, you actually get back all the way to $12,000.
$222,000.
Well, but I mean, 210 of that is loaded this year. So
you're
most of the
exactly right. 210. The closing costs would occur at closing.
So
which we're estimating
over $1 million in extra debt service payments can actually be brought all the way down to $12,000 by using as low a discount rate as
it's not
3.
quite that simple, because what we're really looking at is the difference between 16 million and 14 million over the period of time. So the differences between those two things, considering the time value of money, because you're getting benefit on all of the debt service over that period of time. So and that was explained in the numbers that were presented. The short answer is yes. Not quite that simple, but the short answer is yes. And part of that, Commissioner, and again, you and I discussed it in our meeting, is that the interest rate on the tax notes had a all-in TIC, or an all-in true interest cost. All-in meaning that it took into consideration the cost of issuance, underwriter spread, all the expenses associated with the transaction, and was 2.70% on the 2020 notes. And to be perfectly honest, part of the reason it was that high was because we did have to put that short call feature in it in order to facilitate the refinancing. The anticipated rate that you and I were looking at 10 days ago was about 3.32%. So pretty modest difference in interest rates.
And the face interest, I'm not sure if that's the right name for it, but what I think of as the face interest
Par
rate
value
was 3 on the original notes and will be 5 on these. Are those the right numbers?
Well, What you're talking about is called the coupon rates.
right?
And the coupon rates, it was anticipated or is anticipated to be 5% on the
About 3 on the others, I think.
I'm sure you're right, but let me confirm.
Yeah, please do, because I pulled those out and I wasn't sure I was looking at the right number.
Yes, the average coupon was 3% on the other notes and it's 5% now. But
So how is it, I don't have a feeling for why the spread between the old and the new notes was so small when you use the all-in rate and relatively large when you look at the coupon rate.
I'm looking around for a blackboard.
Yeah, we don't have one.
I'm looking around for a blackboard. As you know, I teach this stuff at Texas State University. These are these certificates of obligation, revenue bonds, general obligation bonds, whatever it is you want to, an entity might issue, are what's called fixed income securities. Okay. And there are 2 things in fixed income securities that never change. One is the par value of the bond, and a bond is defined technically as a $1,000 instrument. And then there's the coupon rate on that bond. And that coupon rate is fixed at the time of the issuance. So if you have a $1,000 bond, and in the case of the original notes, a 3% coupon, what that means is that the owner of that bond gets $30 a year in interest. That never changes, and hence the term fixed income security. That does not reflect the actual yield that the investor is getting. And the yield that they are getting depends on the price they paid for that bond.
Okay.
Because the bond has a stated value of $1,000 does not mean that that's what the people paid for it. They would have paid, and they will pay in both of these cases, a premium for those bonds. They will pay, instead of $1,000, they'll pay, and I'm just pulling numbers thin air here, Michael. I'm just pulling numbers from thin air here. They might pay $1,100 for a bond that still produces only $30 a year in interest. And what that does is have the effect of adjusting the actual yield that the investors get. So when we sold those bonds in 2020 with a 30%, a 3% coupon, the overall TIC was 2.7%. So you can see from the difference between the yield and the coupon rate that they paid a premium.
Well, let me see if it's a lot of what you're describing is what it looks like to the market or to the lenders. And of course, I focus on what it looks like to the county. So from the county's point of view, all we really care about is the 3% because that's what determines what checks we're going to have to write every year to pay our debt service.
Well, that's not all you care about. What you also care about is how much money are you getting.
Oh, right at the beginning. So depending on how it's marketed.
Because that premium that the investor pays shows up in the county's bank account. So you actually sell the bonds, and particularly while we're in this current market conditions where the coupon is now 5% on these bonds, the stated par value of this bond is $11,715,000. So you are paying a higher stated interest rate, but you're paying it on a lower amount of bonds because of the premium that's paid.
Okay, so it actually can make sense to say that from our point of view, the effective interest rate is more like it was 2.7 before and a little bit over 3 now. I forget the numbers. Rather than looking at 3 and 5, which didn't really reflect what we pay.
Because
you have to have the right denominator too.
Right. The 3 and the 5 are placeholders in a fixed income security calculation. You were exactly correct. What the county and the taxpayers of the county would be interested in is how much money are we paying every year in debt service? And that's why we get to the net present value calculations.
Yeah.
So we are paying a higher stated coupon, but we're paying a higher stated coupon on a lower stated par value. And the result is the debt service is all other things being equal would be less.
And forgive me, tell me again what the IRS the discount rate is that you used.
The estimate used for the calculations that you saw 10 days ago, let me find it. It was 3.02 something. There it is, 3.02082.
So roughly equal to what you're saying is the all-in interest, all-in tax interest cost. Is that what the term is?
All in
TIC.
true interest cost. All in TIC.
True interest cost. It's actually
it's-
roughly equal.
It's not roughly equal because the IRS, now remember the IRS.
But I mean, the numbers sound equal to me. They're both.
Well, one's
right around
332 and the other one's 302.
I
So
got to
there's-
332 versus 3.
Right.
And just that amount of spread enables you to get what looked like a gross value of well over $1 million back to 12,000 net present value.
Yes, ma'am.
Because it's just enough years to bring it back.
Yeah, it sounds crazy, I know. But I do want to finish the point about the IRS. The IRS, of course, their job is to maximize revenues to the federal government, not to Aransas County, right? So they calculate this, when they calculate the arbitrage yield, they are taking out of that calculation the cost of issuance, the underwriter's discount, the fee that the Texas Attorney General's office gets, the fee that the rating agency gets. So theirs is not an all-in. And they're looking at what actually are the investors earning on that debt.
Mhm.
And that's why it's less. That's why your cost is more. It's just like when you do a home mortgage, you see two things on that documents that you sign is the stated interest rates and what the true yield is. The true yield is always higher than the stated interest rates on your home mortgages.
Okay, thank you.
Can I ask
You
a
you
question?
tired of my hillbilly accent yet?
Just for clarification, are we talking about the bonds that are 2021 series?
Yes,
Okay,
well, we issued them in 2020, but we didn't close them until March 21 because of the forward delivery aspect.
okay, thank you.
So our decision was in December 2020 and the closing was in 2021.
Exactly. So I apologize for that confusion, but good point. Any other questions? Hearing none, what I would suggest is that we go ahead and go to lunch. And at 1:30, we'll come back and I will be able to share with you then the results of the pricing period that started at 9 and is scheduled to end at 11. And
Does he want to say anything?
I'm sorry.
Would you like to say anything?
Good afternoon, Judge and Commissioners, or good morning, actually. My name is Gregory Miller. For the record, I'm with Bickerstaff, Heath, Delgado, Acosta, and we're the county's bond counsel. I don't have anything to add to Mr. Henderson's presentation, but I do want to thank the county for letting us be a part of this transaction. And based on Mr. Henderson's comments, it sounds like a net positive. So we're happy to be a part of it. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to get in touch.
Thank you very much.
Mr.
All right,
Miller,
let's-
have you got a card you can leave with me? Okay. Right.
So-
I will get my card.
Thank
That one of his characters.
All right, we're going to go in recess until 1:30.
I'm here. Is this off? Mine's on. I never turned it
Hello, Bob.
Hello, can you hear me? Okay. Thank you, Judge and members of the court. As we discussed prior to the recessing the meeting before lunch, we were in a 2-hour order period, which ended at 11 o'clock. We did have great success with interest in your bonds, and we're able to adjust the pricing on the bonds to improve it even better. And the short answer is, and I know Commissioner Laubach is most interested in this. Before lunch, I had shared with the court numbers that we had estimated 10 days ago. As I told Commissioner then, we're over promising so that we can,
under promise.
under promising so we can
So
over
you have
deliver.
good news, not bad news.
Thank you. So we were predicting, the bottom line is we were predicting a 3.32% interest rate on all NTIC. The final numbers came in at a 2.83%. What that translates to in terms of numbers is instead of a net present value loss of $222,000, the loss is going to be only $20,097. In addition to that, the cost of issuance estimate, which we had discussed.
What does that number compare to the 220,000?
222,000 down to 20,000.
So in other words, even including the fact that we have to pay fees the second time we're coming
Yes,
out
ma'am.
ahead.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. So we had predicted a negative gross dollar number of $1,365,000. It came in at $921,000. So we were overestimating by about $440,000 the gross dollar number. We had also, as we discussed this morning, have been estimating cost of issuance at $210,000. We've got them negotiated down to $180,000. So we saved $30,000 on the cost of issuance. We got lower interest rates on the debt, and that wraps up into a transaction that is substantially better than one we discussed this morning. Very nearly a break even given the cost of issuance. Not quite, but close.
Bob, everybody always wants me to say what your fee is. And I think you said last week it was about 6.
Well, I'm glad you pointed that out. I knew it was going to get asked, so I asked them to give me a breakdown of the fees. And what I had indicated last week, just for clarity purposes, is that the cost of issuance on this transaction was roughly the same as the cities. And then I remember that our fees at the cities was around 65,000. Our fee on this transaction, let me get it on my phone to give you the exact number. Fees and expenses combined, that goes to RBC Capital Markets, $73,780.
And what was it a year ago? Do you remember?
I don't recall what it was, but I don't recall. I can get that to you, Commissioner. But
That'd be good. You think it was in the same ballpark?
it should have been in the same ballpark. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, if you would mind later on.
I can do that, but it almost certainly was, it was probably a little higher, but not much because we lowered some of our fees this time because it was a repeat process. So based on this 73,000, the other one might have been, I don't know, 78,000, something like that.
When will this come back up to us to be refinanced?
It won't. Yes, sir.
It's not callable this time.
These bonds are non-callable, so we won't have a chance to refinance them. We've got a 2.83% rate with no call feature in it. So I would not anticipate at all that these would be refinanced. The only way to do so, Commissioner, is on a taxable basis because we didn't put a call date in it. So I would not anticipate to be refinanced ever again.
So when should our last payment be?
February of 2032.
And that last payment is a half-size payment. So it's about,
I'm sorry?
the last payment is a half-size payment. That's why you were saying it's kind of as
Even
if
less
it were.
than that, Commissioner. We had talked about $1.4 million, and it looks like it's going to be about $960,000. Because I had them move, what I had them do in order to help the net present value savings is all the extra benefit we got from lower interest rates, we pushed it forward.
Right. So is there a new chart of payments? Is it just like the old one, only the last payment's lower?
We're going to
You
have
go
to
get
update that Excel spreadsheet, but the last payment's going to be lower. Yes, sir.
And will I get that this afternoon or later?
Probably tomorrow because I've got the calls this afternoon and then I got to drive back to San Antonio.
I'll write it up this way now and I'll supplement later.
Okay. Okay. You happy to answer any questions anyone has?
Any questions? If not, do I have a motion?
To approve the adoption of order 016-2022, to authorize the issuance of the Aransas County, Texas Limited Tax Refunding Bond Series 2022, levying the tax and payment thereof, approving paying agent, registrar agreement, official statement, and escrow deposit, sale of the bonds, calling certain obligations for redemption.
Second.
Motion made and second, Commissioner Laubach. Any discussion? If not, roll call.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye, unanimous. She was muted.
I
but
saw her mouth say
I
yes,
saw her
but I
say
think
aye.
she's muted, I think.
I
Yes, she's
said
aye.
aye.
Okay, there we go.
Okay, now, any other discussion? Anybody want to bring up something? Elected official, department head? Okay. Start doing what? What?
Not starting projects, mobile homes, whatever, without doing the county first. I want to get with Kat and the rest of the department heads.
Anything else? I have a motion. Motion made and second, Commissioner Cheney. All those in favor, unanimous.
Oh, okay.